I don't care about that fake comeback. The Tennessee Titans quit on their coach against the Indianapolis Colts. That and more on today's edition of Locked On Titans.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland, Titans fans. Today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and get started with $200, $250. It is the holiday season at FanDuel. In bonus bets, if you win your first $5 bet, visit FanDuel.com to get started. Quite honestly, the Tennessee Titans quit out there against the Indianapolis Colts. And some people are going to point to that fake comeback in garbage time where the Colts let their foot off the gas entirely as an example of them not quitting. But I am simply not buying it. You can fire whoever you want. You're not going to get me to argue. And quite honestly, the Titans are in the worst possible situation they could be as a franchise. Before we dive into it, I do want to thank you for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day here on the Locked On Titans podcast. Speaking of every day, shout out to my everydayers out there. Tuning in Monday through Friday. Couldn't do it without you guys. If you aren't an everydayer, you need to be one because it is going to be a wild offseason, and I cover the Titans every single day all year round. So with that being said, though, again, just an absolutely demoralizing loss for the Tennessee Titans. 38-30 on the scoreboard against the Indianapolis Colts, which ultimately doesn't make the game feel like it was as bad as it was. So people are going to look at the score, say, oh, it was a one-score game. You know, the Titans held in there. They're not a very good team. They came up a little short on the road. All that makes sense, yada, yada, yada. But the reality is, when you watch the game, when you dive into the details, the fake comeback in the second half with 23 points in the second half, I'm sorry, but I am just not letting that be the reason that I let this team off the hook. We're not doing that. I'm simply not doing that. I'm not going to pretend that this fake comeback that they had at the end of the game means that they didn't quit out there against the Indianapolis Colts, which, watch the beginning of the game. They absolutely quit on their head coach. They quit on themselves out there to start this game. Again, I do not care about the fake comeback. That is not a reason to let this team off the hook and act like, oh, they gave it their best shot. They gave up 300 yards on the ground, 335 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns, 335. All right, I'm sorry. I don't care if you made a fake comeback at the end of the game. You came out there and got bullied. You got pushed around. You got destroyed halfway through the third quarter. Jonathan Taylor already had 200 rushing yards. The Titans came out there and did not want to play football. They were not ready to be physical. They were not ready to stand up and answer the bell that you have to answer to play NFL football on Sundays. They quit. They got bullied. And when you see a bad team, when you see a bad football team give up these kind of rushing numbers, typically in NFL history, that means one thing. The team quit. They physically quit. To give up this amount of rushing yards, and it's not just the defensive side of the ball, the trenches. The Titans got destroyed in the trenches all day long. They got out-physical. They got outmanned. I don't care that the Titans scored 23 points in the second half because they lost the game by getting bullied and out-physicaled and punked. They quit. They physically quit at the beginning of that game. And, they want to say, hey, the Colts let their foot off the gas and, we were able to dink and dunk our way to some points. And we got a couple of stops when the Colts were just trying to run the clock out. See, we didn't quit. We played hard to the end. We fought, and that's exactly, I guarantee you right now as I record this, Brian Callahan is telling the media, this team didn't quit. This team went out there and they fought hard until the end. They got us in a one-score game. This team didn't quit. Did you see the beginning of the game? They started by quitting. And then once the game's completely out of hand, you want to act like this team deserves some credit. This team deserves zero credit for any of that. No, I'm not going to let that fake comeback blind me to everything that we saw to start this game. A team that did not fight for their coach, a team that did not fight for each other, a team that got bullied in the trenches on offense and defense. This is the most rushing yards the Tennessee Titans have ever allowed. The most rushing yards this franchise has ever allowed in a single game. That is quitting. That is physically not showing up to play the football game. I don't care about the fake comeback. Get out of here with that. This is an embarrassment. This game should feel like an embarrassment. The score and the fake comeback should not erase the embarrassment that was this game. We cannot look at Brian Callahan. We cannot look at any player. We cannot look at anyone in the organization and give them any crevice of, oh, it's all right, after that fake comeback. We cannot do that. This was an embarrassment. They got destroyed. It was, 38-7? 31-7 at minimum at one point. This was not an okay game. This is not any game that anyone should take any positives out of, or, that they came out and died on the field. They came out and laid down and got bullied and pushed around. The effort to tackle on defense was disgusting. The blocking in the run game on offense was terrible. Mason Rudolph comes out and throws 3 interceptions. 3 interceptions. And like I told you guys when I discussed why I don't care who plays quarterback. You know why? Because they're not that different. Mason Rudolph isn't some clean guy who doesn't have turnover problems. I explained this earlier this week when we talked about the pros and cons of each. That people acting like the Titans are just not going to turn over the ball now because Mason Rudolph's in. You're crazy. He turns over the ball too. He's a backup. He's a backup. At the end of the day, man, you know that I have been preaching patience all year long. It's early, rookie head coach. Let's see his way through. But I mean, these losses should be embarrassing. They are just getting rolled week after week after week, coming out looking unprepared, coming out looking like the other team is not only better on the roster, but significantly better coached as well. They look like they get outcoached and outplayed every single week. You can't have that. You simply cannot have, and that's why, I've been preaching patience all year, trying to defend Brian Callahan, defend Rand Carthon. But if I woke up tomorrow and you told me that one of those guys got fired, honestly, I wouldn't argue that much with you. And I'll tell you why. First, I do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. If you love watching the game, you're going to love Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy, whether it be football, basketball, or any of your favorite sports. Prize Picks makes your holidays bigger and brighter. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away $30 million in rewards during Picksmas and offering 2 free picks in December. And when you hit on your picks, Prize Picks makes it easy to cash out so you can get your money in as quick as 15 minutes. This week, probably could have looked at Jared Goff, more than 230 passing yards, Saquon Barkley for more than 1 touchdown. It's quick, simple, and so much fun to challenge myself and my friends. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly when you play just $5. It's Prize Picks. Run your game. Titans fans, let's continue today's recap. The Tennessee Titans loss against the Indianapolis Colts that looks a lot better than it actually is. And again, I am not letting this Titans team off the hook by pretending that fake comeback changes what we saw in this game. And the Titans quit on their coach. And the way that things have looked right now and where this franchise is at, honestly, If you told me someone was fired tomorrow, I wouldn't even fight about it. Again, any of you guys that have been watching my show for any amount of time, you know I have my strong opinions. Basically, every single possible topic that you could bring up about the Tennessee Titans, I feel very, very passionate one way or the other that there's a right answer. There's a right way to go. There's a good thing to do. There's a smarter thing to do. Who knows if it's going to be right, wrong, or whatever. There's a smarter path forward between two areas. You want to fire Brian Callahan right now? I'm not going to fight you on it. I'm not going to tell you that firing Brian Callahan would be a terrible decision right now. You want to fire Ran Carthon? I'm not going to fight you on it. Now, here's the reality. Do I think it's wise? Do I think that it's probably going to lead to success if you make a move like that? If you fire Brian Callahan, if you fire Ran Carthon, get rid of them both in the offseason? I don't know. Because at this point, it's hard to have any faith in anything the Titans do as a team. It's hard to believe in anything that they are going to do. And at the end of the day, you look at what we've seen from this Tennessee Titans team throughout this season. And again, I am not going to fight with you because what is there to look at and say that this is going the right way? Brian Callahan has gotten the Titans to a point where they are getting smoked. All right. Again, the score looks like what it looks like. We all saw what happened out there. But look at some of these scores. 30-14, 34-10, 52-14, 42-19, 23-13. The Bengals game, again, looked a little better at the end with some garbage time stuff. But that was 37-18 for a lot of that. 10-6 to the Jags, which isn't a big margin, but what an embarrassing loss at home. Now this one, it's 38-30, doesn't look that bad, but we know the Titans got embarrassed in this game. So half of the schedule, half of these games that the Titans have played this year, they haven't just lost. They're getting smoked. They're getting destroyed. They're getting pushed around. It's an embarrassment. Think about some of the historic things we've seen. The turnovers at the beginning of the season. The way he made Malik Willis look. The special teams against the Detroit Lions. The run defense against the Colts. This season, we have seen historically bad, never been this bad in Tennessee Titans franchise history type stuff. We have seen historically bad stuff. The Titans have 30 turnovers on the season. 30 turnovers. A historically bad special teams performance against the Lions. A historically franchise bad rushing defense performance against the Colts. The Colts couldn't even do anything outside of running the ball. Anthony Richardson was 7 for 11. He was 7 for 11. But they ran the ball for 335 yards. The Titans aren't just losing. The Titans aren't just bad. They're an embarrassment. They're a disgrace. They are some of the worst things, special teams, run defense, some of the worst things we have ever seen in Titans franchise history. Ever. So if you fire the coach who is responsible for that, again, I'm not going to argue with you. Sure. How could anybody logically argue that Brian Callahan doesn't deserve to be fired? Now, we also at the same time have to recognize the downside of that. Who are they going to hire instead? Who's going to be better? Is it wise to roll through coaches like this? Is that going to make the franchise closer to being good? Is that going to make good head coaching candidates want to come to Tennessee knowing that they could be fired after 1 year? Now, the logical answer to that is no, it's probably not good. I don't think a Ben Johnson or anybody like that would want to come play or coach for the Titans after they've treated Mike Vrabel and then Brian Callahan like this. But then someone could always argue, well, the Texans hired DeMeco Ryans after they did 2 one-and-dones in a row. And look, it went right together. Well, I would say that they got a good quarterback and that CJ Stroud is much better than any of the quarterbacks available right now. But regardless of that, again, like, I see it on both sides. I see the idea of patience just from a public relations standpoint. I have continued to say that I think what the Titans should do is keep Ran Carthon and Brian Callahan together for one more season, and then you fire everybody, start over, have a high draft pick and a good quarterback draft, and you're going into the new stadium with brand new people. You know, like, I think that is a realistic option. And then you also got to factor in that Amy Adams Strunk is still paying John Robinson and Mike Vrabel. Still paying. Do you think that she is going to pay Mike Vrabel, Brian Callahan, Ran Carthon, John Robinson, and 2 more other guys who replace him? Even if the right move is to fire everybody, even if the right move is to clean house after the season, even if that is the right move, do you think Amy Adams Strunk is going to pay 3 head coaches and 3 general managers? Because I don't. It's just, and look, I have defended Ran Carthon. We talk about Brian Callahan, but look at Ran Carthon. It's easy, and trust me, it's my instinct. It's easy to say, well, Tony Pollard, Calvin Ridley have been their best players. Skoronski has turned into a great guard the past 2 months. Tajay Spears is a good player. You know, obviously, J.C. Latham has had his ups and downs, but looks to be an answer at left tackle. Had a pretty good game out there today against the Colts. Tavondre Sweat, obviously a good pick. Jarvis Brownlee Jr. looks like a solid pick. You know, Ran Carthon has had some good moves, had some good plays. I don't even really blame him for Will Levis, you know what I mean? Because they had no quarterback option. Tannehill was washed. If you can't get a quarterback in the first round, you got to try to get one in the second round. So, okay. But at the end of the day, he hired Brian Callahan. He made a lot of these moves that haven't worked, including L'Jarius Sneed. They're not a good team. They didn't address right tackle. They didn't address edge rusher. They didn't do any of those things before the season that set this team on fire. And again, at the end of the day, Ran Carthon hired Brian Callahan. You don't get the Mike Vrabel excuse anymore of whose decision was it? Mike Vrabel, Ran Carthon. They're both, no, this is Ran Carthon. So Ran Carthon may have some hits and some misses, and he may be a good drafter, not great, but good drafter. But at the end of the day, you can't just be good at that. That's like Mike Vrabel being a good coach in the games. You can't just be good at that. You also have to be a good hirer. You have to hire good help. And if Brian Callahan is so bad that he's a one-and-done coach, then certainly Ran Carthon has some right to be fired. Because you hired him. If it was that big of a disaster, you were the cause of that disaster because you hired him. So again, if I woke up on Monday morning or I wake up on Tuesday morning and somebody's fired, I am not going to pretend like it's a shock. Now, I don't think that it happens. I think that Amy Adams Strunk does not want to pay all those people. But again, I'm not going to be shocked. And at the end of the day, the reality is this is a lose-lose situation for the Titans the rest of this season. First, I do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Look, the NFL playoffs are almost here, and it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. You could do money line, spread, player props, live drive bets, which I really, really enjoy. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown or how many points each team will score as well. It is thrilling. Not only can you bet on who will win the game, but of course, FanDuel has bets for which player will score, over-unders, team totals, all of that, and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, that's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Titans fans, let's cap off today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. I told you why this fake comeback doesn't change the fact that this team came out there and quit on Brian Callahan. Not only that, but if anybody was fired, I wouldn't even argue against it. I'm not saying I'm necessarily for it, but I'm also not against it. I feel kind of apathetic about the decisions that they make as we stand right here. But the reality is this was always a lose-lose situation for the Tennessee Titans. That's where they're at in the season now. Every single game is lose-lose. There is no winning, but the reality is not all losses are equal. I'll explain first. Thanks again for making Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. Again, it's your team every day here on the Locked On Titans podcast. Check out Locked On NFL for your second listen, though. I host Locked On NFL. It's about time to start looking at, some general NFL things with the way that this Tennessee Titans team is playing. So make sure you check out Locked On NFL. But, again, I said this on Twitter, at TikTok Titans. You can follow me there, but it's the reality. The Titans are in a lose-lose situation. And here's the two ways it goes. Number one, they win the game. If the Titans win, then their draft pick gets significantly worse. And the Titans, as a roster and as a team, are in a place where they desperately need playmakers. They desperately need top talent. And in this draft, we're going to talk about this draft specifically a ton this offseason, but in this draft class, there is probably 10 first-round talents. That's the thing. Not every player that gets drafted in the first round has first-round talent. You just take the best players available to you. You can't just skip your first-round pick, But there's probably only 10 players max in this class that are first-round talents. So the Titans got to be, if they win games, then they get further away from a player of need at a position of need. That's dangerous too. So that would be a lose. You know what I mean? That's a lose-lose situation. Starts with the Titans would win a game, but even if they won, it would hurt them to where they need to get better. But the other side is also a major loss. And I would argue that it is a much, much worse loss than winning the game. I talked about how benching Will Levis was an opportunity for Brian Callahan to show, hey, we're a better team than we look. Will Levis has been hurting us with the turnovers, blah, blah, blah. We're a better football team than we look. I'm going to prove that to you with Mason Rudolph, a backup quarterback. At least we'll play better. Well, that didn't happen. They came out there and got rolled from the start. Again, I don't care about the fake comeback. Get that out of my face. That team quit, and they got embarrassed. So Brian Callahan's first game in the, hey, Will Levis was the biggest problem. Let me show you how I do without him. The first example that he gives us is this game. That is not good. And that's why the other side of the lose-lose, winning would be terrible because of the draft pick situation. But the other side is worse because losing that game, the way that they did, the way that it looked, the way that it felt for 3 quarters, well, that probably means that the Titans not only don't have a quarterback, but they don't have a head coach either. And then, like I said just a minute ago, one man picked them both. Think about that. The quarterback, disaster. The head coach, disaster. Who picked them both? Ran Carthon. And again, Ran Carthon, to me, has done, out of the quarterback, the coach, and the GM, Ran Carthon has done his job the best. He's had some good draft picks. He's made some good signings. He's made some good moves. But at the end of the day, again, I compare it to Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel can be a good in-game coach. Mike Vrabel can be a good situational coach. But if you're going to hire Todd Downing for 2 seasons at offensive coordinator, that's going to kill you. So Rain Carthon can make good draft picks and have a couple good signings. But if you picked Brian Callahan as head coach and you picked Will Levis to play quarterback, well, why should I let you pick a new head coach and a new quarterback? Why would I do that? So the problem is that if the Titans win, it kills their draft pick. And in this draft class, because of the lack of first-round talent, that is a disaster. It's a disaster for the Titans to be this bad and not get a top pick. So winning the game would be a loss. But the other side of it is losing that game that way just lowers the confidence in Brian Callahan if you have a spec left, and in turn lowers the confidence in Rand Carthon. So if the Titans don't have a quarterback, they don't have a head coach, and they don't have a general manager, then this team is lost. And if all of that is true, it may be a lose-lose situation, but one side is draft pick, and the other side is the entire franchise is a joke. And that side may also be a loss, but it is a bigger loss than the draft pick. Is that this team is lost in space. This team is a disaster. This team is doing things week in and week out that are the worst we've ever seen in Tennessee Titans history. So, again, when things are this bad, when things are this terrible, quarterback, terrible, head coach, terrible, and the GM may be doing an okay job, but he picked those guys who are doing terrible. That is part of his responsibility. Crazy. Crazy, man. Again, I guess at the end of the day, I know that a bunch of people are going to disagree and say, oh, they scored 30 points. Oh, they came back. They didn't quit. I watched that game. That was pathetic. They get no credit for that fake comeback. Not a chance. But with that being said, that is going to do it for me today, folks. Make sure you throw a thumbs up on the video. Throw a tighten up down in the chat. Appreciate you guys hanging with me here. Make sure you get subscribed, stay subscribed. But that is going to do it for me today, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.